Do you want me to start recording?
Oh, I just did. So welcome everybody. We have Lori Tsugawa presenting Bushido, the samurai way of the warrior for today. I am very excited to hear what Lori has to share. Start with a little bit of just grounding so we can all bring ourselves present. So if you want to take a deep breath in, let it go. Putting down the worries of the day, anything you're doing before this, anything you may need to do afterwards. Just allow yourself to be present. Taking another deep breath, letting it go. Just bringing to mind anything you're celebrating, anything that's going well, anything you're grateful for. One more deep breath in. And let it go. Just setting an intention for yourself tonight. If you're here to learn, connect, share. And with that, I would love to introduce Lori. And I'm very excited to hear what she'll be presenting today. And she has a PowerPoint presentation set up here for us today. So with that, Lori, please take it away.
Well, thank you so much for having me here, Jeff. It's an honor to be here. And also my VA, Anil, helped me with this and did most of the presentation. I had the ideas, but she's wonderful. Anyway, today is going to be about Bushido. Bushi is warrior and Do is the way. So Bushido is the way of the warrior. And the samurai of ancient Japan lived by this code of ethics, and that's what I'm going to present. Actually only two, but there are 7 codes of the code of Bushido. And so we'll go to so first of all, I'm going to go tell you a little bit about me so you can know, about my background. My name is Lori Tsugawa, and I was born in way back when, but I grew up in the 50s and 60s on a farm. Can you believe that? I'm a farmer's daughter. So the picture I think you'd find interesting because our family friend took our family photo to Japan, had them separated and put on these china plates. And so I still have this photograph, and then it came with 2 matches. But they took our whole family. They only took 4 of them, and the oldest was too old and the youngest was too young, so they had to do theirs separately. But I grew up, and I don't know about you, but not really liking who I was because I grew up pretty much in an all Caucasian community, except for my cousins, and I was teased and bullied, and I didn't like it. In fact, I was called a fat, ugly Jap. Can you believe that? So I didn't want that to define me. So I've worked really hard. I was a good student, did all the things in school, grade school, got good grades. I was a cheerleader in high school. And then I decided when I finished high school to go to college. And when I did, I took Japanese because my parents would talk to each other in Japanese. So I learned what baka meant, and okane and takai means hi. So I learned a few words, but not enough to understand their conversations. That was their secret code. So I was determined to learn that. And I didn't really grow up with my maternal or paternal grandparents. So I didn't know much about the culture. So almost everything I learned, I taught myself or took classes. So that was my life. And then I went to college and, took Japanese for 2 years and went to the Tacoma Art Museum, and I became assistant to the curator. And she told me that. She goes, Lori, you are so Japanese, more Japanese than you realize. I think you ought to go to Japan. And so that planted a little seed in me. And I was newly married. And so my husband and I did go to Japan. And what we did, we contacted my father's relatives. That would be the Tsugawas on the island of Shikoku. So it was very interesting to make that connection. And we finally took back then, you take the plane, and it was a long journey. And loved it. And when we arrived, I just loved it. I felt like I saw all these people that kind of looked like me, but they didn't really sound like me, or our mannerisms were different, but I felt at home just to see a black hair and people that looked like me, talked like me, acted like me a little bit. And so I loved it going to Japan. And so the first thing we did is we stayed the whole time in Kyoto, and we went to the Jidai Matsuri. And the next slide. And that was who I saw, and she really impressed me. Tomoe goes in. Now, she was born in 1157 and lived to 1247. So she was 90 years old when she passed away. And I didn't even realize there were female samurai warriors. And I was just impressed and saw other female warriors. So that was really impressive. And it made a deep impression on me because she's so strong and so regal. And I've seen other tomoes in that parade. Is called the Jidai Matsuri, held on October 22nd every year in Kyoto. But if you happen to go to Kyoto during that time, this is a must go to, because it happens once per year, and Kyoto has two other festivals during the year. But I think the Jidai Matsuri is amazing because there's about 2,000 people dressed in period attire. So next slide, please. And our Japanese relatives, my father's cousin, gave us a copy of our family crest, our kamon. And if you notice on the top is a stylized sword and three hearts there are three leaves that look like hearts. And I said, "Domo arigato gozaimasu." Thank you very much. And I didn't realize the significance of it until later, much later. So I went on live. We raised a family, two boys, and they're now adults and have grandchildren. But that this just kept coming back to me. But then in 2005 and 2007, I'm middle-aged, I was rear-ended twice, not once, but twice. And the second one, I suffered traumatic brain injury, and I was reading at a 7th grade level, and I was pretty much helpless because I was in so much pain. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't read. I was pretty much like a non-productive citizen is what I was. And so I worked my way back, and I decided not to let that define me. And so I worked hard and on both a lot of the physical therapy and vision therapy, all types of things. And speech pathology, you name it. I probably went to about 1,000 appointments in order to regain wellness. But had I not, I wouldn't be here with you today. So during that time, I decided to research my background. And I found out about the samurai, and I started reading about them, and that they lived by a code of ethics known as Bushido. I didn't know that. I thought they were just warriors that fought awesome battles, and they were fierce warriors, but they also lived by that code of ethics. And that's what really impressed me about them. So I continued to research, and I made the goal of writing the book. And when the book was finished, I knew that samurai spirit was in me. So I found out when I was researching that these are if you look up at the top, these are stylized swords on the top and on the side, right there, and three hearts that look like katabami, like hearts, but they're katabami plants, which are part of the samurai bloodline. So I found out that we are actually samurai bloodline, and I knew it that DNA of the samurai warrior was in me. And so I continued to write on the book, and when the book was finished, we can go to the next slide. I knew that the samurai spirit was in me. So the first book was self-published, and then in 2018, I signed a contract with Tuttle Publishing, and the name of the book now is called "Let the Samurai Be Your Guide." And it talks about Bushido, and it's gone. I even went to Tokyo for a book sign last May. No, I'm sorry, 2 years ago. So this is the book that is now published by Tuttle Publishing, and it's on Amazon. And interesting because it's not about the samurai and their battles. It's about the samurai code of ethics. And we'll go into that. So this is called the Code of Bushido Guide, and I will be happy to send these to you. This is something that you can put on in a little frame and then put it on your wall or put it on your desk. It's a good reminder. It's a good sage or samurai reminder of what the samurai lived by: courage, integrity, benevolence, respect, honesty, honor, and loyalty. And they were so dedicated to the code of Bushido that they were willing to do the ultimate sacrifice, seppuku. If they disobeyed their lord or their master, or put shame to the family or to the community, that's what they would do. So we're ready for the next slide. And so the code of Bushido is the way of the warrior. And that's the kanji for it. So the next slide. And here's a little bit more breakdown. The 7 principles are courage, integrity, benevolence, respect, honesty, honor, and loyalty. But we're only going to be speaking about courage and respect today. And this is a slide that Anel did for me. I think it's really interesting. It's has the Japanese and it also has the English. So we'd be happy to send that to you. So the first one we're going to talk about is Yuki, courage. What do you think about when you think of courage? Does anybody have a thought about that? No, well, we'll go into it further because courage is so important. It is not just going through blindly. What it is it's like a calculated risk almost. You weigh what the consequences are going to be, and a good person that we're going to have is going to show you what courage really is. Go to the next slide. We're going to talk about Chune Sugihara. I'd like to show a show of hands. Have any of you heard of Chune Sugihara? Has anybody heard? No? Oh, great. Okay. Well, Chune Sugihara was born on January 1st, 1900. Now that in itself it's an amazing date. He was born, I believe he was born for greatness. And he was born of samurai blood. His mother was samurai and his father was not. But the mother, they were like middle class samurai. And she was more the samurai spirit of the arts and all those types of things, languages, traveling. And that's what he decided that he would want to do. But his father had other ideas for him. And the idea was, because he was a good student, he wanted him to be a doctor. But Sugihara did not like the sight of blood. So how can you be a doctor? So they sent him down to Korea for the medical examination. So he goes down there dutifully, and only thing he does is write his name on the exam. And that meant that I was here, but I did not take the exam. And so his father was furious and just said, well, my obligations to you have ended and you will be funding your own college education. So that's what he had to do. He did not want to go into medicine, because how could you go to medicine if you hated blood? So he went to Waseda University and funded his own education. He worked diligently and then also had many opportunities that came his way. And one was to go to school. He won a scholarship to go to a school in Russia. And he did that. He did that. And then he entered the service after that, because he's so well versed in Russian and Japanese. And he also learned English. So I believe he learned about 5 languages. And he was just an amazing person. And when I read his story, I first saw it in Seattle at the Wing Luke Museum. And when I saw it, it just left an impression with me, because he had everything to lose and nothing to gain by going into to be a consul general. So we'll see that in the next slide. He was a vice consul from Japan to Lithuania during the war. And so what he did was he went there and he had a wonderful life as an ambassador and with his wife, and they would be all dressed up, and he in his tuxedo and she would be in her kimono, and they had a wonderful life and they loved their lives. And when they went to the consul embassy, they would have a place for their children and they lived quite the life. But he went to a Hanukkah party and met some of the Jewish refugees, and they told them of their plight, that the Russians were, I'm sorry, the communists were coming in, the Nazis were coming in, and they were being annihilated. So if he had just ignored them, they would have all faced annihilation. So they went to his doorsteps at the consul's office, and you can go to the next slide, and they begged for visas. They said, oh, this is Chune and Yukiko. This was before the plight of the Jewish refugees. But the sign says, no Jews allowed. Now, some of you may remember that was the same sentiment, no Japs allowed. And those kinds of signs were up in the United States, but that kind of sign was in Europe. And they started coming in and slowly but surely annihilating the Jewish population, which is very sad. So go to the next slide. Now, on his doorstep in Kaunas, Lithuania, there were hundreds of Jewish refugees from Poland and some from Lithuania that begged for visas. And he didn't know what to do. And they came every day, hundreds of them. Can you imagine? They came and they wanted to get help. They wanted visas, and none of the other consuls would write them for them. So what he did is he telegraphed, I was going to say he texted, no, he telegraphed the government of Japan to write the visas for the Jewish people. And he did it 3 times, and 3 times they said, no, we will not allow you to write those visas for the Jewish people. And so it was a dilemma for him. What did he do? What should I do? And so he went to his family, and he would ask his family, what should I do? And they said, well, Papa, you tell us to put ourselves in their shoes. So we're putting ourselves in their shoes, and they need help. So I think you should write the visas. And so he did. For about 5 weeks, wrote the visas tirelessly, while other consuls closed their doors, left. He kept writing them, and he kept writing them day and night. And every day his wife wanted to help him, but he didn't want her to, because she could have been implicated. And they could have faced death or prison, but they did face prison. But he had to do the right thing. He says, what's wrong with saving lives? There's nothing wrong with saving lives. And so he went ahead and wrote those visas. And because of his bravery and his courage and really compassion, because he had nothing to gain. Whereas other people that have were saving Jewish lives did gain some compensation, but he did not want compensation. So he just did it because he was a humanitarian. He said, what's wrong with saving lives? He says, there's nothing wrong with it. So we go to the next slide. And this is a transit visa. So he wrote these transit visas during this very short period of time. And what he did was just write them tirelessly day and night to help the Jewish people. My husband and I went to Japan, to his memorial museum, and this is a picture that he took. And his actual transit visa that was written by Sugihara. And because of his bravery, over 6,000 lives were saved, and he wrote over 2,000 transit visas for the Jewish people. And it was really amazing, very, very emotional to go to the museum, because just knowing what he did and how he gained nothing, but he just did it because he wanted to save the lives of Jewish people. So the next slide, please. And because of his bravery, he was awarded the Righteous Among the Nations, and he was awarded to Senpo Sugihara. And he went by the name of Senpo because he did not want to be sought after or or people to find out about him. And Yad Vashem wrote this for him, the Holocaust Museum, in 1984. And at that time, they wanted him to come to Jerusalem to receive the award, but he was not well enough. So his son and his wife went in his place. So the image on the left is the actual copy of the award that he won, or award that he received. And so the only thing that they said, well, we want to help you. We want to compensate you. And he said, well, the only thing I can think of that you could do is take care of my son. And he had one younger son. And so the government of Israel educated his son in Jerusalem. And so his son married a Jewish woman, and they now live in Belgium. And he travels sometimes to the United States, but there are people that still celebrate him. They're called Sugihara survivors. So you wonder what some people think, oh, well, it's just a little something. But if we all do our contribution to the world, imagine what our world will be like. He did just one thing, and he didn't realize how much he had done until much later. In the 60s, some of the Jewish people wanted to find him, and they had been wanting to find him, but the government of Japan just said, no, we don't have any record of him, because they didn't really want to talk about that part of their history. But they still survive. They still celebrate Sugihara survivors. So that's just a wonderful story, and it just warms my heart every time I think about it, and I think about what he did. He was amazing. So remember Sugihara, he was the first Asian, the only Japanese, and since then there have been other Asians that have won the Righteous Among the Nations.
Lori, can I make a comment?
Yes.
So Sugihara was not recognized as anything by his government until recent years. Finally, the government decided to honor him, and for his bravery, it changed the whole vision of him. And it was the early 2000s that they had a ceremony in Osaka, which I was the JSL president at that time. So I was able to go and speak in behalf of JSL at that award ceremony, where he was actually recognized by the Japanese government. Able to meet his wife and his family at that time.
Oh, what a wonderful, thank you for sharing that, Floyd. Now every time I hear that story, it just really warms my heart, because I think about what he did. He was a maverick. He really was. And he had everything to lose and nothing to gain by writing those visas.
That posterity of 6,000 is grown to about 100,000 posterity. Yeah. So it's a lot of people.
I do Israeli dancing, and some of the dancers say, oh yes, my relative was a Sugihara survivor, and they still celebrate him. So now, and I'm going to be going to Portland to speak about Sugihara next year, and it's with the survivors, the Holocaust survivors.
They actually had a ceremony in Washington, D.C. for him also. In the early 2000s.
And now the only one that survived is his son, his youngest son, Nobuki. Right. So he's still carrying on his memories, which is wonderful, because we don't want to never forget. One person can make a lot of difference, and we might think, oh, well, we're just one person. What can we do? One person can do a lot, especially if you do it. You know that this is your purpose in life. And that's your ikigai. So we'll go to the next slide. So our next one is going to be about respect, Ray. And for this one, what I did was I talked about the people that were the MIS, Military Intelligence Service, and I chose Roy Matsumoto because his story is another wonderful story. So I'll start off on the left is a picture actually from the archives in Hiroshima. And his family was in photography. And because of the war, they couldn't find the supplies. So they left before the bomb. And that picture there was before the bomb. And it was several months several months before the bomb dropped, they moved to the country because they're looking for photography supplies. And so Roy Matsumoto and his brother were in the United States. The other three were in Japan. So it's like a family divided, kind of like the Civil War. And they didn't have communication at that time. But he went to the camp and decided that he was going to, actually they recruited him because they knew about his language, that he was very familiar with languages. In fact, he knew different dialects of the Japanese language. So he was quite a war hero himself. And I got to meet him once. They had made a movie about him, but he's just a sweet, humble man, and it was just amazing to meet him because they had this movie about him, and he was just as cute as can be. He couldn't hear very well, but he was so sweet. But I just thought this was amazing because this picture is very, my friend, actually his daughter gave it to me, and it was from the archives in Hiroshima. So that was very special that they gave it. And then the other one is Merrill of Merrill's Marauders, pinning him for his service, because what he would do, because he was so fluent in the languages and different dialects, plus the Japanese did not write or speak in code. So he would go up on top of telephone poles or wires, and he would intercept messages, and he would come down and he would tell the officers what was going to happen. And because of their efforts of knowing where the enemy were, they really shortened the war by but they say about 2 years. And one time he got up, and because he knew the language so well, he gave a command to the Japanese army, and it was to forge ahead and fight. And they all fell to their deaths because he was so good at Japanese that he made this command, and they didn't know where it's coming from, but he did that, and they went forward and to their death. So that is Roy Matsumoto. If you want to go to the next slide. And that's when, at age 100, he received the gold medal. And okay, I'm sorry, I did not include that one that he won, but it's an amazing what he did win. So we'll go to the next one, and I'll tell you about that. This is from the JECL book, courtesy of The Power of Words. And I actually have this in my book. I received their permission because there's so many euphemisms, like they say, well, and I still see it, and I still correct people on it politely. Like they say, especially the one about evacuation. Well, evacuation means that there was a natural disaster, and there was not a natural disaster. It was exclusion or forced removal. And they were relocated, but they were done. So there was no reason for them to be relocated. Non-aliens, U.S. citizens of Japanese ancestry. I don't know if any of you have seen those horrible posters that they did, but those will probably make your blood boil. Any or all purpose, and this is in their book, The Power, from the JECL, Power of Words. Relocation center, and they call them American concentration camps. Yes, they were relocated, but they were done incarceration camp, illegal detention, and they really were inmates because if they wanted to leave, what would have happened? There were guard towers, there were the barbed wires, and all around the property, they were watched. And when my dad went to it, the first thing he remembers is being greeted by the guns. I asked him to, and that's also in my book, I asked him to write about or tell me about his experience. And so I did it, and I wrote it down and I typed it out. And then he says, no, wait. He says, I remember being greeted by guns. He says, that really put an impression. And he thought, oh my goodness, what am I getting into? But they were at Minidoka, and Minidoka was a pretty peaceful camp, detention center. And they were really almost self-sufficient. They were, it was a very peaceful camp, and people were, did the best they could, and the parents did the best they could with their kids, and to make it as normal as possible so they wouldn't be frightened. So just wondering if, just want to know if your parents were in there, or your aunts, uncles. Both of my parents were in there, but they weren't married at that time. Were any of your parents, uncles, aunts, grandparents in one
My
of those
grandparents
camps?
were in the camps.
Do you know which one?
Might be Topaz.
Oh, Topaz. Okay. There's not much there at Topaz. I've been there.
I was born in Poston, and my grandparents on both sides, plus my parents and my aunt and uncles were all in Poston.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How- You were born there, you said?
Yeah, in 44.
Wow.
Hmm. Both
And my
brothers.
family also, my aunts, uncles, parents, grandparents were in the camps. I don't know which ones, but definitely they were part of that relocation.
My family was in Tule Lake.
Oh, okay. Were they were they the resistors?
The No Boys.
Resistors. They said no to those questions.
Actually, oh, my throat. Excuse me. Both families were put there from the get-go.
Oh, I see. Did they stay?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Once they were there, they weren't going to move.
Oh.
Both grandparents, grandpa's like, no, I'm just staying here. My mom's father and mother were samurai family. Anyway, they just stayed there. And then the other one, my grandpa had 3 kids in Japan. One was fighting for Japan.
Mhm.
They were old. And he had 2 teenage boys. One was my father, and he had 4 more younger children. And my grandmother had died in camp.
Mm.
And then, so he had the 6 children here. The 2 boys said, no. And my grandfather didn't know what to do, so he said yes.
Huh.
It was,
It was a hard time.
right.
Mhm.
But yeah, he got beat up, my
Mhm.
grandpa.
My mother was in there in Tule Lake, but they were released and did domestic help.
Mm.
afterwards. Did you want to share, Floyd?
Oh.
Maybe. Oh, that's okay. We're going to go on to Steve Jobs talking about the Code of Bushido. It's a very short film, so if we could show that.
Is about death. When I was 17, I read a quote that went something like, "If you live each day as if it was your last, someday you'll most certainly be right." It made an impression on me, and since then, for the past 33 years, I've looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? And whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something. Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart. About a year ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. I had a scan at 7:30 in the morning, and it clearly showed a tumor on my pancreas. I didn't even know what a pancreas was. The doctors told me this was almost certainly a type of cancer that is incurable, and that I should expect to live no longer than 3 to 6 months. My doctor advised me to go home and get my affairs in order, which is doctor's code for prepare to die. It means to try and tell your kids everything you thought you'd have the next 10 years to tell them in just a few months. It means to make sure everything is buttoned up so that it will be as easy as possible for your family. It means to say your goodbyes. I lived with that diagnosis all day. Later that evening, I had a biopsy where they stuck an endoscope down my throat, through my stomach and into my intestines, put a needle into my pancreas and got a few cells from the tumor. I was sedated, but my wife, who was there, told me that when they viewed the cells under a microscope, the doctors started crying because it turned out to be a very rare form of pancreatic cancer that is curable with surgery. I had the surgery, and thankfully, I'm fine now. This was the closest I've been to facing death, and I hope it's the closest I get for a few more decades. Having lived through it, I can now say this to you with a bit more certainty than when death was a useful but purely intellectual concept. No one wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there. And yet, death is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it. And that is as it should be, because death is very likely the single best invention of life. It's life's change agent. It clears out the old to make way for the new. Right now, the new is you. But someday, not too long from now, you will gradually become the old and be cleared away. Sorry to be so dramatic, but it's quite true. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. When I was young, there was an amazing publication called the Whole Earth Catalog, which was one of the Bibles of my generation. It was created by a fellow named Stuart Brand, not far from here in Menlo Park, and he brought it to life with his poetic touch. This was in the late 60s, before personal computers and desktop publishing, so it was all made with typewriters, scissors, and Polaroid cameras. It was sort of like Google in paperback form 35 years before Google came along. It was idealistic, overflowing with neat tools and great notions. Stuart and his team put out several issues of the Whole Earth Catalog, and then, when it had run its course, they put out a final issue. It was the mid-1970s, and I was your age. On the back cover of their final issue was a photograph of an early morning country road, the kind you might find yourself hitchhiking on if you were so adventurous. Beneath it were the words, "Stay hungry, stay foolish." It was their farewell message as they signed off. Stay hungry, stay foolish. And I have always wished that for myself. And now, as you graduate to begin anew, I wish that for you. Stay hungry, stay foolish. Thank you.
The reason I did that was because Steve Jobs actually loved Japan. I don't know if you've noticed that in his showrooms. He was very influenced by it. They say that he would visit Japan and have um, pottery masters make things for him, and he liked them a lot. So the next part of this is I'm going to be doing a very short master class about the samurai, and the first one is about ikigai, is knowing your purpose in life, and we call it the Ikigai Awakening. And so this is an ebook, and each one comes with a workbook. And then the next one is From Struggle to Strength. This is about Gambaru. Do any of you know what Gambaru is? Nobody? Yeah. Okay. Well, Gambaru is never giving up and don't finish until it's complete, until the task is completed, because we can have all kinds of great plans. And say if I were just to go, okay, Sarah, I'm going to be this way for the rest of my life, I would not be here today. And so I just worked and worked and worked and did everything I could to get better. And then finally, when I was able to start reading again, it was a wonderful feeling, because that was hard time in my life. But I actually, what it did is it brought me to the prison, and I worked with prison inmates and learned their stories. The last one is about the Kodo Bushido, and that is my book. And I don't know if you've seen it, but this is my book. I don't know if you, oops. Yeah, there we go. I wrote this book as to overcome traumatic brain injury. And that was my goal, was to just keep writing and writing and writing until I could say, I've overcome traumatic brain injury. And so I did. I've just worked tirelessly for many, many, many years, from the time of the accident in 07, and then it was published in 15. So that's quite a few years. That is the Kodo Bushido, but we can't cover all of that in this short time. It's only going to be 5 weeks. The price is going to be amazing. And so I'd love to share with you more about it when it's going to come up. It's going to be coming up this month, at the end of the month, and then it's going to go right before Christmas. I wanted to finish before we got into Christmas. So that is the master class I'm doing. So we can go to the next one. Oh, I'm sorry. And that picture, could you go back? I'm sorry. This picture might be interesting to you. Let's see. This is the one I purchased on commercially. And actually, no, this is the one that I took myself when I was at Fushimi Inari Shrine, and that's out in south of Kyoto, a little bit south of Kyoto. And the other one was taken by, that one right there was taken when I went in, let's see, 2019. Someone took a picture of me, and it's really a beautiful place. If you go to Kyoto, you'll probably go to Fushimi Inari Shrine. 10,000 of those torii gates. And on the other side are the names of the business or the families that contributed for that one gate. They say about 10,000. So let's go to the next one. So I'd love to have a chat with each one of you and to find out, just to find out more about you. And I love to talk to people, and I especially really enjoy speaking with Japanese people, because there's such a minority of us, and not many people know much about what happened, because our parents, well, my parents' generation, the Nisei, were amazing, and they didn't drag it out. They just went, well, some people say shigata ga nai, means that can't be helped, but yeah, it could have been helped. Now, they didn't have to lock them up. There was no reason to do that, except for, we won't get into that, but it wasn't positive, for the reason that they were behind bars and lost years of their lives. And lots of them lost because their bank accounts were frozen. How could you pay taxes? So a lot of them lost property, unfortunately, but some didn't. I know of people that did not. So I'd love to have instead of serving coffee, I'm saying let's have a tea. And virtual tea, green tea is famous in Japan. And just FYI, it's the first 5 leaves of the tea branch. and the rest of them go to other kinds of tea. So that's why it's very expensive. So it's the first 5, and they call that matcha. And it's not in those large terraced fields. They're just smaller fields because they don't produce a lot. But I'd love to have a tea with you and get to know each other, because I think it's important to hear other people's story. And a lot of people don't know about the story of their background because our parents didn't really talk about it. They didn't think we wanted to know about it, or maybe they wanted to leave the past behind. My mother wouldn't talk about it. My dad did, and he would go to high schools and libraries and talk to people about what happened. But it's amazing how he would talk, but he did without malice. It's just, he wasn't bitter at all. So I find that amazing. My mom just wouldn't talk about it. And she just said, oh, it happened, and must not have been a very good thing for her because she was at Tule Lake. So the next slide. So this is a picture I took for my first book, and it's Gambatte Kudasai, and that means never, never give up. And that's what I want to encourage all of you. You may have a dream. You may have something you want to do. Well, they say, well, I'm too old. Well, the Colonel started his business with his Social Security checks. And he just went tirelessly until he started his own restaurant. And I can remember this. There was a restaurant near us, near Portland, that was actually selling the flour with his 11 secret spices. And my mom used to buy it because she goes, oh, the other parts, buying the chicken's too expensive. So she would buy the flour, and we would have our own Kentucky Fried Chicken. So that's you never give up. And, people do wonderful things in their, when they're seniors. I'm doing it. I'm retired age, but I do not want to retire because I love this. I want to do this. I want to share about the Kodo Bushido and the Japanese culture because it's a rich heritage, and we have so much to be proud of. And that which I once scorned, I now embrace. Make lemonade out of lemons, because it wasn't a happy time for me growing up, but that's okay. I've learned a lot. I learned a lot from that. And I learned that, you can't be like that. That's not a good way to be, is to be prejudiced or name calling or anything like that. So it teaches us how we should live life. So I think that's the end of my slides. Yes. And that's to contact me. And if you don't mind, I would love to send you my email, and it's all about Japan and Japanese activities, and you won't find yellow lines or red marking pens or a plea for money. I don't do that. I just give you good information. And tomorrow I'm going to actually speak about the late Senator Inoue and his life and how he went. And what I featured in the book was about his time in the camps. And he was not camps, I'm sorry, in World War II. And he was actually a lieutenant, and he showed leadership by not saying, get out there, guys, go out there and fight, and him sitting back and reading a book or whatever. He went out on the front lines with all of his soldiers. And that's how he received the I don't even want to talk about, that's how his arm was hurt, or it was damaged, and he had to go in, did not want to go in to get help, but he almost passed out from a loss of blood. So they made him go in. And when he went in and the soldiers came in, and they go, oh, how are you doing? How do you go? He goes, well, did anybody call off the war? And they go, no. He goes, well, get out there and fight. And so he was a leader before he became a senator. And that's what I wanted to share in my book. And that's what I did. So I would love to connect with you. I love speaking about Japan and anything that having to do with Japan. I'm even considering becoming a speaker on a cruise to Japan. Ritz-Carlton's having two in 26. So I'm going to be applying for those opportunities because I just love Japan. It's my happy place. I've been there twice a year since COVID, since the restrictions came. were lifted. I've been there twice a year. I'm going twice this year and hopefully twice, at least twice next year. So I would like to know if we could, do you wouldn't mind if I could take a picture of everybody. I'm just honored to be here. And if you wouldn't mind, would that be okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
If anybody is not okay, you can go ahead and turn your camera off. We'll grab a screenshot. So 3, 2, 1. Laura, you want to smile? 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'd like to have some comments. Did you, questions? Did you learn something? Was it inspiring to you?
Rose has a comment.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for sharing so vulnerably. And I think it was really painful for my grandparents.
Rose, it was hard to hear you. If you want to maybe start over.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing so vulnerably, and it feels like you healed past versions of each of us in sharing what it felt like to grow up as a Japanese American little girl and to hold all of that history and trauma and also love and resilience and all of the beautiful qualities that make our culture what it is in its essence. Um, it was really hard for my grandparents and my mother, who was Okinawan, to talk about any of this after having lived through it. And so I've been so grateful for all of the people in my life since then who have worked really hard to make it something that we can talk about, that we can alchemize into beauty and into strength and to make the world a better place. So really, really grateful to have gotten to witness a part of your story and to feel the little girl in me go, oh, that's what that feeling was. So thank you, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to add?
Lori, I didn't go, my family did not go to camp, and it took me a lifetime to learn about camp. And I happened to have the opportunity to study Asian studies in college. And then later, I actually have been to Japan probably 100 times
Oh,
because of my work. And I go a lot and still learn about the culture and the people. I actually, my two sons learn Japanese, and so they live and work in Japan now. So Japan is continues to be a big part of my life and guides a lot of the things that I do. Um Even though I'm involved in Asian American stuff here in the United States, Japan is something that has been a very major part of my life. And I appreciate the culture. And as I say, I learn something every time I go there. So thank you for your presentation.
oh, you're welcome. And thank you for being here, Floyd. It means a lot to me. You look like you want to speak, Ron.
Sure. I thought, your story alone is very inspiring about how you overcame your traumatic brain injury, and you had that samurai spirit. And I was thinking of a story. My parents and relatives, they were in the camps, but they didn't really talk about it. But one time I was with a dinner with my uncle and his family and my cousins, and he was talking about living in the barracks. Very basically, it was just wooden walls with tar paper on the outside. And he said, he would take the blankets in the evening, and he would have to shake all the bugs out. And it was very graphic, and it was one of the few times that I actually heard a relative talk about the day-to-day experience. And I think it's something that my sons, they're adults now, but need to really be aware of. And when I was going through college, I felt this discrimination from the whites and so on. And there's that question.
Uh-oh, can you guys hear?
Oh, I somehow got muted. Anyway, thank you, Lori, for sharing. And I have your book. And what I love about it is not only do you tell the philosophy of the samurai, but the detailed stories that you include about real people that relate to each of those 7 attributes is incredible. Just the amount of research that you put into it. You know, I highly recommend people not only to study the code of Bushido, but to really experience hearing about actual people who went through, who lived what the samurai talked about. So thank you, Lori.
Oh, you're muted, Lori.
Thank you, Ron. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, Lori, I would like to also thank you for kind of taking a lot of some of the, a lot of what I understand about my background and culture that I received from my parents. Um, it's been very intuitive, but I attribute it, as you have outline kind of all the characteristics, is helpful for me to understand why I do this, or why I'm driven, or why I can't give up, or why I'm overly loyal. So it's interesting to, look at it from that perspective of the samurai. Yeah. And also, I wanted to mention that, there is a short film on Sugihara. You probably have watched it on, it's called Vices and Virtues. It's with Chris Tashima. He was a actor and director, and he also won an Academy Award for that particular film.
Huh.
Yeah. It's Vices and Virtue.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Yeah, thank you so much, Lori. It was awesome to learn so much about things that I've heard little bits about, but like have more in-depth explanations. So it was really cool. And then to have the breakdown of your mon was like really interesting. I'm familiar with mons, but never like kind of the background or more in-depth history. That was really cool.
Would it be okay if Jeff forwarded the emails and I could send you like that code of Bushido and some of the information that I have? My newsletter, I have all kinds of information.
Yes, I would love to receive it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Would that be okay with there? And then I'll add in there, if you would like to have a virtual tea. We don't do coffee, we do tea, right? We're Japanese. You can have a virtual tea with me. And
How
I would
about
love,
sake?
pardon?
Sake.
Oh, you can have sake. That I don't know about sake.
Carolyn,
but
try unmuting yourself again.
Pardon? Oh,
There you
did
go.
you say I muted myself? Okay. Well, anyway, if Jeff would forward that to me, I will just send you an information packet. And I have help with Anel, who is my awesome VA, and I wouldn't be able to do everything I do if it wasn't for her. I'd probably hide in the bunkers. No, I wouldn't do that, but I would have it would take me a lot longer to get things done. So she helps me a lot. And I'm really thankful to have help, because my right brain is just full. I'm full of ideas and plans and all kinds of goals. I mean, I have enough to do for 5 lifetimes, that many things. But my left side's kind of going like, huh, what's going on? I'm not, I'm not so technically adept. My husband's an engineer, so that's why he's the left and I'm the right. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Domo arigato gozaimasu. Thank you so much. I really appreciated this time with all of you, Floyd and Ron and Marlene, Carolyn, and Anel, and of course, Jeff. It was a wonderful evening, and it just warmed my heart to be here with all of you. So if you
Thank
know
you.
of anyone else that's looking for a speaker, I love to speak. I'm contemplating coming down to San Jose. I don't know, hopefully this year. I'm not sure. My aunt wants me to come down and speak to her group of people, so I just might do that.
Yeah, well, that'd be cool. Let us
That
know
would-
when you come.
Is everybody here from San Jose except for probably Floyd?
No, I'm from,
Always.
well,
You from where?
closer to, well, Walnut Creek, so in the
Oh,
Bay, but not
yeah.
in San Jose.
Okay. Okay, so is there anything else that you would like? I have the code of Bushido. I have, all kinds of things that I could send in an email. So maybe I'll send that. And if you want something else, or even the recording of this, you can just email back and say, could I have this or that or whatever?
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you again, Lori. And
Well, thank you, Jeff. I really, really appreciate you asking me. I'm very honored to be here tonight.
yeah, no, we're have you. So thank you. We will be doing another one November 14th, and that'll be Kazuhisa Nakagama presenting Doing Business in Japan and an
Cool.
overview and recent topics of Japanese taxation. So I
Wow.
hope you guys can join us on November 14th, same time, 7 p.m. Pacific. Cool.
Okay.
All right, guys. Thank you all,
Thank you.
and have
Good
a good
night.
rest of your evening. Take care.
Are
Bye.
you recording this,
Thanks
Jeff?
again, Lori.
Yeah,
Thank you, Jeff. Have a
This
good night.
recording.
Oh, you're welcome.
YouTube.
You're welcome.
I'd love to send the recording of this to my two sons.
Oh, that would be great.
and
Yeah,
daughter-in-law.
I'll forward that with the links that Lori sends, so that it'll be included.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Yes.
welcome.
Thank you so much. Mata
Take care.
ne. Oyasumi nasai.
Yasumi nasai. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much, Jeff. Really
Yeah,
appreciate
thanks.
it.
That was awesome.
Goodbye, Carolyn.
Bye, guys. Yeah, there is a red button over you, Carolyn. I don't know.
I don't know how to get out of this now.
All right, I'll end it for us. All right.
Okay.
I can't end it either. What is going on?
I don't know. In the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh, I have to stop the recording. That's why. There it is.